Thank you, Myrtle, for coming in today to talk to me about your untraced find. As we know, untraced find is a legal term in museums' collections for an item that doesn't have a story. So what we've done through this project is given items a story, but there was one item that you picked up on that I think really captured your imagination.
Yeah.
And would you like to describe it to me?
I recognised it immediately, Kieran, because it brought back such happy memories to me as a child. It's an undergarment which was worn by girls. Gosh, if I said 60, 65 years ago, that's how long it would have been since I would have worn one of these. Used to keep you warm, and as I say, it was an undergarment. It was supposed to be pre-brassiere. I suppose it's a type of cotton. Got a fleecy underside, and it's got rubber buttons that were terribly difficult to get in and out.
I think we called it a Liberty bodice, and it was a precursor to fancy underwear.
Yeah, that's right.
And as a very small child, you told me a beautiful story about your early memories of wearing one and where you wore it. In particular, that really captured my imagination when your parents were running the farm.
Oh, yes, that's right. My mother, as a farmer's wife, helped out on the farm. One of her jobs was to help Daddy in the milking parlour, milking the cows. And she used to always take me out to the byre. But to keep me safe, I was put into the nut barrel. I was left standing in the nut barrel, nobody else with me. But when the cows came into the byre, they always looked at me, with their big soft eyes. I knew the question they were asking was, "Who are you and what are you doing here? What are you doing in my barrel of nuts?" Because they were all trained to go to their own part of the byre, their own stall to stand to be milked. But they liked to stop at the nut barrel to have a little nibble, even though they knew when they got to the place that they stood, there would be a trough of nuts for them. The thing I remember the most, and the most scary thing, was their breath. I remember their breath. I remember the smell of them. I remember their big soft eyes, and I remember how terrified I was. But my mother probably never realised that I was scared. But she put me there because it was somewhere to keep me safe. Otherwise, I would have been trampled into the ground, obviously. And they were such big creatures too. They were really, really enormous. It was one of my very early childhood memories, and I'm actually surprised that I do remember that.
And you gave some lovely, vivid descriptions about the whiskers on the cattle.
They had great big heads, and you could almost feel their they had these great big long, I suppose they are called whiskers, big whiskers, and the dribbling from their mouth because they wanted to put their head into the nut barrel where I was standing. It was the first time probably that I felt any kind of fear. I don't remember crying or anything, or my mother being concerned, but that's where I was put. It was an experience I'll never forget.
And you told me some lovely memories about not only the Liberty bodice that possibly came from, we're both children of an era where second-hand clothes were the norm. There was nothing wrong with it. So you inherited clothes from cousins.
My cousin, that's
and
right.
You gave a lovely description about when your auntie would arrive with a box of clothes.
Yeah,
you knew
right.
that you were
Yeah,
going
that's
to be
right.
getting some nice garments.
We knew we were in for a treat because we knew we were going to be getting clothes that were different, that were more expensive than anything that we had to wear or that was available. This was a cousins of mine who lived in County Down, and County Down to us was hundreds of miles away, and we were always jealous of our cousins. They sent clothes and they sent toys. I remember getting a doll, and we had no dolls in our house. There were two girls, myself and my younger sister, and we had no dolls or anything like that to play with. But in this box there was a doll, and we couldn't believe it. But we didn't really like it because we didn't like the feel of it. It was rubber, and it had blinky eyes.
I think dolls are very personal.
Dolls are very personal, yes.
If you've had a doll or a teddy bear
right.
since childhood,
That's right.
you've given it its own little
Yeah, of
character.
course. Given it a name and everything.
Exactly.
No, it wasn't really ours. That's how I felt about it, that it had belonged to somebody else and we weren't really entitled to it, but I mean, we played with it anyway because it was there.
And your granny, was she quite instrumental in
She
helping
was.
on the farm, helping to look after you, I
Yes,
suppose?
yes.
Yeah.
She would have done the cooking and the cleaning and prayers at night. That was the other thing that I remembered about my granny was very particular about. You said your prayers at night. You know, we had to kneel down, and she told us what to say, and that kind of gave you a grounding for, I suppose, beliefs and religion and all that kind of thing. But my father and mother weren't really, they weren't churchgoers, and I never could understand, you know, how does this fit in with my family? But it's just one of those things. It's what grannies did.
What I think is amazing is how a small but perfectly made object
That's right.
that's still soft
Right. It's
has
beautiful.
brought back so many memories for you.
Yeah.
You even mentioned the type of shop that would have come from. You mentioned a
Yeah.
department store.
That's right.
And, you know, these things now, you can see them, you can find them on eBay.
Yeah.
I've added this to my collection. I bought it in for this project.
Yeah.
I have no idea where it came from.
Yeah.
So the fact that you've been able to relate a story to it, and that, I think, our senses are heightened when, as we get older, to our childhood memories.
That's
I've got a tiny pair of shoes with me that I often present together with
With the bodice.
the Liberty Bodice, because it conjures up an era of a certain type of style of dressing. I think if you gave a young child now a Liberty Bodice to wear, it would be quite quickly rejected. Whereas
Of course.
I think we're both from an era where when you were told to wear something, you did.
Yeah, that's
I can remember balaclavas and vests. Now I don't think many people would do that.
Yeah, well, I remember the vest because we used to wear the bodice on top of the vest, and that kept you really warm. You couldn't have gone out of the house without your bodice on. I mean, obviously it was only mostly the winter time, but I mean, all the girls at school wore them. Boys would have worn a different kind of undergarment, you know, to get under their normal clothes. But this is what girls wore. Now, we loved them, and I was communicating with some of my friends that I used to work with, and they would be a similar age to me. Only two of them knew about Liberty Bodices, but you mentioned the shop there. It probably was a chain store, but to me it was a draper shop, and the shop was called Tweedy Atchison's. I don't know whether they still exist or not, but it doesn't mean anything to me now, obviously.
I think what would be lovely if somebody's listening to this podcast and they are reminded not just about the Liberty Bodice, but your experience, but also the shop. There might be some connection there. I wanted to thank you. This has become one of my favourite stories because I kind of felt your fear.
Yes.
I understood. I was not brought up in the country, yet would be transplanted to the country for the summer. And I think you've really conjured up the type of little girl that you were, because you've still got that playfulness and that ability to tell a story as well. So thank you, Myrtle. Thank you so much for sharing that again.
Thank you very
And
much.
have you enjoyed the project?
Yes, absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it, because it made me remember about things from my childhood that I never thought I would remember. And I was talking to my sister, who would be next to me, and she had none of those memories at all, which I was surprised at because she is younger. So she really should remember just as well as me. You know, they were very pleasant memories, and I enjoyed the whole project. I learnt so much.
It's been a pleasure working with you. And thank you for the story, Myrtle.
Not at all. Thank you.